Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report Podcast, Energized by Celsius. It is a Thursday edition of the show. I know not all of us are over Gronk retiring, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that today and how it fares for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers heading into the 2022 season in regards to, are the Bucs still one of the top two seeds? Some would argue with Gronk, they're one. Some would say they're two. Are they still in that category, even though Gronk won't be back this season, or, as some others are saying, might be back halfway through the year? We will get into all of that discussion. I'm your host today, Matt Matera from PewterReport.com, and joined with me is, also from PewterReport.com, Casey Hudson. Kay Huddy, how are you today?
I'm surviving. I'm doing well. It's been a crazy week between Gronk's retirement and a lot of hockey drama. So yeah, it's a week.
Yeah. Should we start with the Bolts? I mean, that was a very depressing
way
that they lost last night. I know a lot of fans are complaining about that. The Avs had six men on the ice, and other people are saying, well, the Lightning got away with that last year when they had 7 guys on the ice.
Mm-hmm.
John Cooper was like devastated after it happened, but nonetheless, the Bolts have a big mountain to climb.
Yep, and that's literally what Coach Cooper just said a few hours ago, that the mountain got a little steeper, but they're still climbing it. So yeah, definitely a lot of drama there, and of course everybody wants their opinions to be heard a little louder than the person next to them. So it's been an interesting 24 hours on top of a crazy week. So, but I'm here and we get to talk Tampa Bay sports, so I'm very fortunate.
Absolutely. Let's try to cheer everyone up a little bit. I know it's tough to cheer people up when we're talking about Gronk not being here, because that's not a good thing. But I will switch gears here a little bit, do some house cleaning as we do to start the show. And there was a little news that you can get excited about for the Tampa Bay Bucs, and that's that they announced their schedule for training camp this year. It is going to begin on Wednesday, July 27th, the last week of July before we get into August. And they got about 12 days that are open to everyone. A lot of it's for season pass members and stadium club members. They also got Military Day on August 1st. That's always great. They have a Community Day for Special Olympics and other foundations on August 3rd. The Women of Red event is on August 9th. And you also got 2 joint practices in there on August 10th and August 11th. That's joint practice with the Miami Dolphins. They'll also have a joint practice with the Tennessee Titans. However, the Bucs will be traveling to Nashville for those practices. Casey, I don't know about you, but I think like Scott has different thoughts about training camp because he's done it for so long where he's just ready to hit the fast forward button and get to the regular season. I still enjoy being out in training camp. I think there's a lot of awesome competitions that go on. I know it's really hot out there, but, still getting a nice tan going at the same time. More of a farmer's tan, but nonetheless, just being out in the open, watching football, I think is great. And the joint practices are the most fun because you finally get to see a little competition that isn't just the Bucs against the Bucs. It's the Bucs' best players going up against the Dolphins' best players and the Titans' best players. So that's one of the funnest times for me, just being up close to the action, being able to report on everything.
Oh, yeah. And it makes it like nobody doesn't like the official start of a season, like something that says, oh, my gosh, football is here, or hockey's here, or whatever's going on. Like that's the official beginning of everything. And what I think I like the most about training camp as well, because aside from Scott being so seasoned and ready to dive into the season, I liked really kind of seeing how far the rookies have come from, draft day to rookie mini camp to, that quick little acclimation period before they have time off. And then now they're in training camp. So I kind of like to see how they measure up to the vets. And I really love seeing their ability to communicate and learn from one another because they're in a different situation in terms of practice. So training camp just has its own feel, its own vibe, its own very, very important details that revolve around it before diving into the season, because practices look so different when season actually hits. So I enjoy training camp. Yes, it's hot. and I'm walking around with like a backpack full of water and a notebook and a camera, and I feel like I'm at actual camp, like a child all over again. Snack packs in my backpack, and it starts early, and it's Florida and it's summer, so as media, we don't even know what to expect. So it's still pretty exciting because we can wake up and it can be sunny, and then all of a sudden it's like downpouring, and then it's the indoor, and then what did we gather from indoor? So it's all very exciting, the beginning of the season. There's a lot of excitement that surrounds around it, and plenty of sunblock for me.
Especially like you said with the rookies, just seeing who retained the information from rookie minicamp to OTAs to mandatory minicamp, and we saw the Bucs at minicamp a couple weeks ago. It is interesting because everyone learns in so many different ways, and we talked about that with some other players where some can just read the playbook, draw it up on the board, and be good to go. Others need to go out there and perform the block or run the route, whatever it might be, get that coverage when you're backpedaling as a defensive back. So it's very fun to see who retains the information. It's also really your first glimpse too for someone such as like Russell Gage that's new to the team, or Akeem Hicks, seeing them, how they mesh with all the teammates that have been here. Just want to give a shout out to a couple people in the chats. Emily Compa says, "Hi Matt, hi Casey. Let's get the season going," and hit that thumbs up button, hit that like button. Please do, everyone that's watching. We appreciate you watching the show, and make sure you hit subscribe to Pewter Report TV and hit those like buttons. It helps us get those views up, and helps with our algorithm for people that are Bucs fans and NFL fans that might not know about Pewter Report. We got a lot of great content both on pewterreport.com and with Pewter Report TV. So by subscribing, it costs you nothing. It just lets you know when we have new videos and when the podcast drops. So if you could do that, we'd really appreciate it. Casey, wanted to ask you, as we get into more Rob Gronkowski Bucs discussion, Scott and I spoke about it. JC spoke about it on the show yesterday. But just give us your overall reactions, thoughts, maybe where were you when when Gronk retired, and there's still hope for the Bucs, right? Isn't falling. They're losing a great player, but there still is some hope for the Bucs this season.
The world is not over yet. So granted, was I particularly expecting a retirement? No. I think Scott kind of touched on it in you guys' podcast. He was like, we were kind of more prepared to have he finally re-signed podcast versus that he's retiring. But it makes sense to me because bear with me, everybody. I clearly talk too much because all I do is talk for a living, and my throat's catching up with me. But the thing with Gronk is that, when he initially retired from the Patriots, most fans and people closest to Gronk would say he was putting his body through a lot, and he kind of just wanted to feel like a human. He's still a younger guy. I'm sure he has a family in his future, yada, yada, yada. So when he, retired from the Patriots, that was more of a body maintenance decision, and then comes back because he got the bird call from Tom Brady, and, they had their Super Bowl run, and that was awesome. But that Super Bowl season, if you look at it and think of it, he was very healthy,
Played all team.
Yeah. And it's just like, when you look back over his career at the Patriots, it was very rare, aside from the beginning of his career, where he had full season to dedicate to his team and himself and something to feel good about, physically as well as mentally. Then he comes back this previous season, and that rib injury and that lung puncture, like, you have to think of the severity of a lung puncture. These athletes push through things, beyond their means. And at that point, I'm sure that was a reflective point for Gronk to be like, look, this is why I kind of retired to begin with. And if my body is not going to hold up like it did last season, like, I kind of have to be done. So I respect the fact that he retired, because he just has a tendency to, I think once the health issues begin, it's a domino effect for a guy like Gronk. His size, what he puts his body through, what he is to a team. He's not just out there blocking, he's catching, he's doing so much that it makes sense that he needs to probably turn the page and focus ahead. As for the Bucs, though, I know a lot of people are like, well, that tight end position is very, very naked now without a Rob Gronkowski. But I don't think it's the end of the world, because they do kind of more so rely on their wide receivers. Everybody's hoping to see a whole different production with the running back group. So this is kind of just going to force that a little bit more. You know, we're going to see a lot more production from the running backs, hopefully some versatility in those plays. And then, you know, the wide receiving group, even though I wanted that group to look a little differently due to the draft, and it didn't, you know, we have Russell Gage and we have these guys that are supposed to make an impact early on. And Brady said it from the podium. They're expected to make an early impact.
Yeah, right away. As you said, Charlie Abraham's just finding his chat right here. Charlie agreed with you. He said the Bucs will be fine as long as they stay healthy. And then he also said health was a big factor as to what happened at the end of last year. We know that. I'm initially thinking, though, we'll talk about the health of the Bucs in a little bit, but to go back to what you were talking about with Gronk and his rib injury, and Scott's talked about this too, that is not an injury that just heals easily. No. You know, that takes time, and it's tough for anyone if they get injured. Immediately, you're just like, when can I come back? How quickly can I come back? And it's tough to tell anyone, let alone a pro athlete and a future first ballot Hall of Famer, to be like, hey, you got to sit this one out. You got to sit out a couple of weeks. Think about the timing, too. He got hurt week 3 against L.A. The team that the Bucs are playing next week, the New England Patriots. I think Gronk really wanted to play in that one. So, and I remember it might not have been the New England week, but the week after, Gronk he wouldn't practice during the week, but he would participate in Friday's practices. And, you know, that started stirring the pot, getting the speculation going. Oh, maybe Gronk will play this week. You know, for all the times that he gets hurt, he's still a really tough guy. Maybe he'll go play. But no, he sat out a couple other weeks, and that was the right move. He absolutely should not have come back, you know, in week 4, week 5, kind of like what we were hoping early on, because we got to remember, and it's so tough because we live in a world overall, but especially in sports, where we want everything now. And you got to understand, I'm not talking to like anyone specifically, but in general, you got to understand that, you know, if a player gets hurt in September, the most important thing is that they're back in, you know, November, December, the playoff run going into January. Now, if Tom Brady gets hurt, all right, you're screwed. I love Blaine Gabbert, but, you know, the Bucs aren't necessarily going to compete for a Super Bowl.
He's not throwing him on his back,
with Blaine as the guy. But I think for Gronk to even overcome that rib injury is a huge kudos to him. And then looking at the Bucs, too, we talked a lot about the secondary in general. I think they're due for a bounce-back year just because they're going to be healthy. We mentioned it on yesterday's show. Make sure you guys check that out if you haven't watched it yet. We mentioned on yesterday's show that, you know, the main guys, Carl, Dean, a lot of them in the secondary, the main guys did not play together as a unit until week 17 because SMB got hurt early. Carlton got hurt in the New England game and was out for a while. Jamel Dean had a couple instances where he got hurt in the game and had to just injuries across the board. And I just think defense, if they are fully healthy, are so ready for a bounce back year for the Bucs.
Oh, majorly. This defense is so hungry to not fix, but to just kind of like dead last season. The injuries were just so, I mean, especially as an athlete and as a career, it was annoying. And it started from the beginning. It started week 1. Week 1, SMB. Week 2 was somebody else. Week 3, Gronk, this guy. I mean, last season was so injury prone that realistically, I think the Bucs team as a whole are just looking for a productive season that they're not counted out because of things that are out of their control, you know? And that makes it hard. To be discounted for things that are out of your control versus things that are in your control. That's a way different mental space to have to overcome. So the hunger behind this team, regardless of who's on the roster, is going to be significantly different because they're hoping that it's not going to be injuries that put them out. It's going to be a talent, skill, and communication situation. And you make such a great point as to like the athlete mentality and like Gronk and like the rib injury. That's not an easy thing to overcome. And you're talking about a man's career, a man's job. So athletes don't give themselves the right time to heal. I can even just say that as a human being. I hate being cut down for any amount of time. I never allow things to heal properly because, you know, once you're done after a couple of days of sitting around, then you're just like, all right, what's next? So I think for Gronk, that was a major injury to deal with. And you made a great point to say that actually started earlier in the season than I think most people recollect. And to deal with that and to try to fight to come back and stuff, like it would have been completely different. And I think we would be having a whole different conversation if Gronk had another healthy season like he did their Super Bowl season. Because, young guy, still has a lot of life ahead of him. I'm sure there's plenty of things that he wants to do. I'm sure that there's a family in store for Gronk, and that's going to take a individual to run around.
Exactly. That's a whole nother point of it, is that Gronk and Tom Brady, but Gronk in this case, because he is retiring, he doesn't need to keep playing. He's done everything that he needs to do in this league. 4 Super Bowls, a couple of All-Pros. Again, going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He doesn't need to keep playing. He's essentially playing because he just loves the game of football. We've all seen him on multiple different commercials, guests on TV shows and podcasts, hosting things. Gronk is going to be everywhere. He's still going to be on TV, just not playing football. So,
exactly. He's an entertainer at the end of it all.
He is an entertainer.
The only disappointment to Gronk retiring now is that there's this, bigger conversation as to, is he the greatest tight end in the league? Is he the greatest tight end, period? And whilst he's very much top tier, how do we declare this? Is it just because of the things that he's done? Is it the amount of Super Bowl rings? Or is it comparison to other big greats like Tony Gonzalez? And, I put Jason Witten up there and
Casey, that's
guys like that. And we're talking about guys who had seasons that were well over 10,000 yards and, over 1,000 receptions. And Gronk didn't break that.
Yeah, Casey, I think that's an excellent transition that you're making right now. You also made I love the thing that you said. You made a great point about the hunger of, some of the guys that were injured are coming back this year. And we talk about hunger and being hungry. I know when I'm hungry, I love to eat fast brand protein bars, as you see on the screen there. Of course, Celsius Energy Drinks is they also produce these fast brand protein bars. And guys, if you don't know about the fast brand protein bars by now, you got to get in on it. They have great flavors as they taste like candy bars. There's white chocolate, cookies and cream, and salted caramel peanut crunch. There's 20 grams in these bars, and the taste is delicious. There's multiple ways to have them too. You can have them straight up. You can cut them up, warm them up in the microwave a little bit, throw it into your ice cream for a dessert. It's also a great substitution for dessert. And when we talk about Celsius and the fast brands, they're all about versatility. Whether it's all the different flavors that they have with their energy drinks, or the white chocolate cookies and the salted caramel peanut crunch. It's great flavors, and they're perfect for, if you oversleep and you got to have a quick bite to eat while you're heading to work. You can have it then. You can have it right before you do a podcast. You can have it right before you go and work out. There's many great different scenarios where you go and have a fast brand protein bar. So make sure you go to Amazon.com, click on the link in the description below of our YouTube channel, where you can go and order yours today and set up whether you want them 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whenever you want. But make sure you check out Fast Brands and their delicious flavors. I actually have both on me right here. Here's the white chocolate. Yeah, cookies and cream is great. The salted peanut crunch I'm also a fan of, but make sure you go and get both. All right, Casey, let's get back to
when you put it in yogurt, so.
Yeah, that's great too. I haven't done the yogurt thing, but I will. I do eat yogurt from time to time. People might not believe it, but yeah. So as we were talking about, as you brought up, the discussion between Gronk and is he the greatest of all time? Mm-hmm. I think personally, in my opinion, I'm not going to say it's not close because that would be disrespectful to players such as Tony Gonzalez. But I think, hands down, Gronk is the greatest tight end of all time. And I understand he doesn't have every single, record in terms of career longevity with, in football. But still, in his career, when he's at his best, he is the most dominant, unguardable tight end that there is. He's just bigger than everyone. He's stronger. He'll body you up. get that position, make the catch. Very difficult to bring down. I mean, that's why he had so many injuries, because guys would just be chopping at his knees the whole time, because it takes 2 or 3 players to take him down. And while he might not have the stats over Tony Gonzalez in the regular season, in the postseason, it doesn't compare. And I understand football is a team game, and Gronk's playing with Tom Brady, who's the greatest quarterback of all time. But Gronk put up monster numbers with the Patriots, in the playoffs. And while he didn't do as much with the Bucs in the postseason, he came up when it mattered most in the Super Bowl, when he had the 2 tutties and over 60 receiving yards.
So now that takes me to 2 questions with this topic. Is Gronk the greatest tight end overall? Should he have broken records such as Tony Gonzalez's 1,500 yards and Antonio Gates' 1,300 yards and Jason Witten's 10,000 yards if he had a quarterback like Tom Brady his entire career?
Well, I think for him, it was just the injuries. I think if Gronk is fully healthy for his whole career, yeah, he would. I think without question, he would go and break those records. But, health is a part of the game. But I think there's a reason Gronk he was on the NFL All 100 team when they came out with that list a couple seasons ago. I believe it was they made the announcement. It was after the Chiefs 49ers Super Bowl in Miami. He made that team. Again, his playoff numbers, I don't think compares to really anyone in this league. But speaking of the regular season, Gronk played in 143 games, had 621 receptions for 9,286 yards and 92 touchdowns. So still pretty good. Tony Gonzalez, on the other hand, he had 270 games. So, I mean, already the game differential, you see.
Doubled, really.
Yeah, you already see that. He played in 270 games, as my laptop froze for a second.
15,127 yards and 1,325 receptions.
And 111 touchdowns. So, I mean, Gronk at 92 touchdowns isn't crazy far away considered the
how much downtime.
Yeah. And, without question, regular season, Gonzalez has the numbers. You can't really argue the numbers. But again, I put more of an emphasis on when you're at your peak being the most dominant. I think it's Gronk. Like, it's I know Tony Gonzalez, he's a great receiver. He was one of the first guys. I think he would dunk the ball through the goalpost before it became a penalty. That's another argument. Is it the Gronk spike or the Tony Gonzalez dunk? Like, which one do you like more?
Please put that in the comments, because Tony Gonzalez was one of my favorite tight ends for a very long time before, Gronk broke the scene to 17 seasons compared to 11. But yeah, I'd love to know, celebration-wise, was it what do you call that thing in the tight end post, the goalpost?
I just say dunk. It's like a basketball dunk.
I don't know why I wanted to call it like an alley-oop and just be so ridiculous. That or the Gronk spike. That
would have been, someone should have done that, because an alley-oop, you're just passing it and the other guy dunks.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not as creative as the Joe Horn cell phone thing when he put it when he put it under the goalpost, but
they could all do better. But yeah, that's true. I think that stuff qualifies Gronk. I mean, when you really think about it, it's just it. I think the basis of Gronk's career has been the fact that he has been battling injuries for the longest time. And it did start in college, if people paid attention to his career in college and stuff. So it makes sense. It's crazy to think of what he would do if he had a couple more seasons in him, for number one, if he could stay healthy, number two. And I don't 100% wholeheartedly believe that we won't see him at some point of this season.
Yeah, I wouldn't rule that out either. I'm going through Gronk's playoff numbers. So he played in 22 playoff games. He caught 98 passes for 1,389 yards and 15 touchdowns. Tony Gonzalez, I think, only played in he kept making the playoffs with the Chiefs, but they always lose in the first round. And then I know he went with Atlanta, like one of his last years. He finally won a game with Atlanta. I believe they beat Seattle. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't the year that they went to the Super Bowl, though. So I'll look up Tony Gonzalez's playoff record, too. But nonetheless, I mean, two great great tight ends. And yeah, please put in the chat who you think is better. Emily says, it comes down to who would you rather have on your team? I would pick Gronk. I would too. See some for Kellen Winslow Sr., the former Chargers tight end. 179 says Kellen Winslow Sr. deserves some consideration because of the way he revolutionized the position. That's a good point, too. And I think it's tougher for us because we grew up watching Tony Gonzalez and Gronk in his prime, where I remember the game because it's on like NFL films where Kellen Winslow, it was like Chargers and I want to say Dolphins. And the game went into like double overtime because it was a playoff game and everyone was just exhausted. And Winslow made all these great plays. And so that's a good point there. I know a lot of people, analysts and stuff, people have said like Mike Ditka was a great tight end back in the day.
Right.
I just remember Mike Ditka as the Bears coach, the 85 Bears, because we don't talk about the 85 Bears enough in sports history. And also, he had a great cameo in Kicking and Screaming. I don't know if you ever saw that movie. He's awesome in that movie. Nobody's smoking. Whatever.
He's actually a pretty good actor. I'll give that to him. But Ditka's got personality and just so much flair. So.
Oh, here's another good one from Big Tips. He says, Shannon Sharp said recently Gronkowski is the tight end GOAT. I didn't even see the end of the comment. I thought he was just going to say Shannon Sharp is up there. Shannon Sharp is another great tight end. So
yeah, Baltimore Ravens and who else? Who was his first team again?
I think he played for Green Bay, or his brother played for Green Bay. Sterling Sharp.
He was something, and then wrapped up at Antonio Gates. I thought was fabulous. Like he's another one who has just like ridiculous accolades. Over 1,100 receiving.
He's the true blue. He started the whole. Oh, he was a basketball player, and we turned him into a tight end.
Yes, absolutely. And he's up there, too, 116 touchdowns and stuff. But you make such a great point. At some point, it's not really all that comparable because what tight ends used to be to what tight ends started to become when, we started watching football to what some tight ends are now. Like, tight ends legit used to just be a part of the offensive line. They were there to block, and that's what you did in a pro-style offense. And then all of a sudden, you got these basketball players that turned into tight ends, and they could catch a little bit, but they still had the block. So you had this split, versatile role that you had to be able to commit to. And then when I was coming out of college, it was hybrid tight ends. And John and I talked about this a lot during the season for anybody who watched, those podcasts that John and I were on together. And that stressed me out. I hated it. Seeing a hybrid tight end freaked me out because then it was just an oversized or a larger wide receiver just doing routes, can't block for anything, not very strong. They're not even breaking 6'4". They're now under 6'3". And so there's been such a transformation in what a tight end is. So I would love to know, what do people classify as a tight end? What is a true tight end these days? And how do you compare that to the greats? Are they still all very comparable? Because then you have Shannon Sharp, you have Mike Ditka. There was another big one, Casper. His last name's falling short on me right now, but I picture his face so crispy right now. But his name's Casper something other. He was another just true blocking tight end, part of the O-line kind of guy.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's slipping me at the moment. I think a good comment here from Ben. He says guys like Sharp and Kelsey simply can't block like Gronk can. And that's where it's tough to quantify because there are much more receiving tight ends. Someone like Jimmy Graham, who we spoke about on the podcast yesterday, where we know Gronk is he can do it because, again, he coined the phrase, I'm a blocking tight end, baby, when he said it. In his first year. So I think in terms of well-rounded tight ends, I think Gronk, again, has a good argument there. Finally pulled up the stats for Tony Gonzalez in the playoffs. He played in 7 games, had 30 receptions for 286 yards and 4 touchdowns. So playoff-wise, when it matters most, it's not even close. Granted, Gronk had way more opportunities.
Yeah. So a lot more playoffs in his time.
Yeah.
He was a good team.
Absolutely. I do want to get to a super chat. Shout out to Leo. Thank you so much for the $4.99 super chat. He's answering the question of the podcast itself. He says, yes, the Bucs are still a contender because the NFC is weak, but Gronk is a huge loss, and I don't see Otten replacing him. This is why we needed McBride. He's referring to Trey McBride, who was pretty much the number 1 tight end on the board in this year's NFL draft. I know I was a fan of him. discussions we had going to the Senior Bowl. He was one of the top guys there. But Casey, let's look at the entire NFL and the Bucs offense too without Gronk. So obviously there's no replacing Gronk. And the Bucs, we know they got Cam Brate, starting tight end, been here for years, fan favorite. He's a serviceable tight end. I like to say he's steady Eddie. You know what you're going to get out of him. After that, it's a little bit of a mystery because Cade Otton's a rookie. And he's still coming back from an ankle injury that he had even before the draft. The Bucs knew about this, so we haven't seen him practice at all. Kieft is he's a blocking tight end through and through, hand in the dirt, gonna get in your face, and I hope
glass.
Yeah, exactly. He's part of the glass eater group. I know it's Luke Gedicke's. It's his title, but I think if they want to make it like a faction or something like that.
Yeah, they could be like the Bash Brothers.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Especially if he lines up next to Ryan Jensen. I really think the Bash Brothers are going to be Ryan Jensen and Luke Gedicke. And then I know Keefe will be more towards the end, but who knows? Maybe they'll pull a center and a guard on a play and, go to the other side of just for the heck of it. Yeah, just one play. All we need is one. But with that said, there's a lot of uncertainty at tight end there. Also, Cody Mcelroy, he's played in a career 3 games. He made his only catch in 2019. He's a guy that's been a fringe roster player. We spoke about this on the podcast the other day when Gronk first retired. But I'm saying all of this to get to my point of, I think with the Bucs offense, going back to 2019 when Bruce Arians and Byron Leftwich first got there, yes, they have Cam Brate, and they know what he can do, and he can be a safety net at times, the third down option if everyone else is being covered. But this offense has always been about the receivers and going deep down the field. Now, Brady and his connection with Gronk, of course you're going to use that. You're not just going to be like, oh, well, we got 2 Hall of Fame players. Let's not, get them the ball as much as possible. But I think with Gronk not there, and I know Brady has chemistry with Brate, but I think Brady is going to rely a lot more on Mike Evans, Russell Gage, Chris Godwin, Leonard Fournette to a degree. I think we're going to see those guys really pick it up even more, where the tight end doesn't become that much of a focal point anymore, kind of like how it was in 2019. And the Bucs could still score a lot of points. They just turned the ball over a ton, and that's why, they had the record that they had. But now they have Tom Brady, and Tom doesn't turn the ball over that much. So I just think it's going to be a case of, okay, well, we still have a lot of star players and very talented guys on this team. Let's just make sure we get them the ball and we can overcome Gronk not being there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely agree for the most part, because like we discussed this previous season, if there was one thing Tom Brady was tested on, it was how to make decisions and trust other players. But that trust word, and you and I talked about this the last podcast we were on a couple weeks ago, is that it's the trust factor for Tom Brady. And so the games that Gronk had to miss and the games where Brate had to kind of resurface as that tight end 1, we saw Tom, go to Brate. And there were some very significant plays that Cameron Brate made for the team that helped keep this team in these games the last couple of weeks of the season. So I don't put it past Tom Brady that he didn't know weeks before. I'm sure Brady and Gronk had conversation well over a week ago, and Brady was privy to the fact that this was coming. Let's be serious. They're best friends on top of teammates regardless. So you can already count on a guy like Brady to have a plan calculated, which means there's going to be an expectation heading into this training camp. So could Brate potentially be that guy? Well, he's not Gronk, but there could still be an active role for a tight end, because at one point or another in the beginning of Brate's career with the Bucs, Brate was that guy. He was that tight end. He was the one, who was heavily relied on in red zones, and he was making a lot of things happen. So we've seen that Cameron Brate has the potential to really be reliable as long as he builds that relationship with his QB1 being Tom Brady. So I think that's going to be something that Brady works on, because he likes to have his tight end options. We know that for a fact. Mm-hmm. And we don't know what, Cade Otton's going to be able to offer depending on the injury and everything else. the hard part with saying like there's other big names on this roster that Brady can just rely on and go to is the fact that like other teams, the opponents are really going to kind of be relying on that. So this is going to be a big year for people to step up. The next man up mentality is going to be even heavier because if they start locking in on these names of the guys that are the top of the roster, somebody else has to show up. And that's going to be huge for the wide receiver group. That's where I am so like anxious to see how that's going to pan out. And that's why I'm really looking forward to training camp, because I want to see what versatility they're going to add to their packaging, seeing as how, you know, if Evans isn't going to be available, then who's next in line? Like who's going to make it happen? So Brady has to kind of play that trust fall game all over again. And he does such a rapid version of it. Like you have 1, maybe 2 reps to get it right to gain his trust.
Yeah, that's something that Leonard Fournette talked about, that some guys, it takes a whole year before Tom Brady really trusts you. And that's what's going to make that wide receiver 4 through 6, or how many they decide to keep. That battle, I think, is going to be so exciting. It's funny. You talked a lot about Cam Brate, and I just think it's funny. He's been like everywhere in this offense, just in terms of he's been the top guy. He's been the undrafted free agent, just fighting to make the team. He's been, you know, the second on the depth chart that is still makes an impact on the team, but isn't technically the starter. And we all know, even when he is the top guy, that he's going to be that red zone presence. You could always bet on Cam Brate to be there when the Bucs are in the red zone. And if you want to bet on the Bucs this year, a great place to go and do that is mybookie.ag. And while football season isn't here yet, there's still a lot of other sports to bet on. Stanley Cup's still going. Hopefully the Bolts can push it to 7 games. We'll see. There's a lot of UFC fights going on. Usually most weekends there's a UFC fight. The World Cup's coming up in the fall, so you could bet on football and football all at the same time. And there's always golf every week too. So a lot of things to bet on. And of course, baseball. And 162 games of a baseball season can feel like a grind to watch, but you can put the excitement back into each and every game with MyBookie. Run lines, money lines, first inning no runs, the best bet in all of sports, and props galore. Nobody gives you more opportunities to win than MyBookie. You could bet on the Mets. They lost 2 in a row, but they still have the best record in the National League. Let's go Mets. Getting started is simple. Deposit up to $1,000 and play with $500 instantly. Just use promo code Pewter to claim a MyBookie deposit. Whether you're a diehard fan or a newcomer to the sport, there's never been a better time to join the MyBookie family. Go ahead and sign up today using promo code Pewter to secure your first deposit bonus up to $1,000 with MyBookie. Whatever you put in, they'll meet halfway, again, all the way up to $1,000. A cool G, as they say. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie AG. Once again, that promo code is Pewter, P-E-W-T-E-R, as you see on your screen right there. Casey, let's talk about how the Bucs fare with the rest of the NFC, because I think most people would say that with Gronk, the Bucs are, you know, if not the number 1 seed, they're the number 2 seed. I think without question. You can make the argument with the Rams; they're the defending Super Bowl champion. It's tough to argue when you're the defending champ. I know they've lost some guys. Von Miller's not there anymore. For me, and just looking at, you know, the competition and just the NFC in general, like just going across the board, the NFC East, nice test week 1 against the Cowboys.
Yeah.
But like the Eagles don't intimidate me. And I know they just traded, you know, for a wide receiver this year that's big, and they drafted another one too. Nothing about the Giants or Washington, you know, really moves the needle for me, I guess I should say. So other than the Cowboys, for me, you know, if it's Bucs or Cowboys, I'm taking the Bucs. I'm sure a lot more of that will be answered in week 1. I really think the NFC West is, again, just going to be a crazy mosh pit of the teams beating up on each other. Rams defending Super Bowl champs, 49ers have a quarterback situation with Trey Lance going in there as the starter now, and Debo didn't want to be there, but then he reported to mini camp. So what's going on there? And the Cardinals, again, very talented team. DeAndre Hopkins is suspended. Kyler Murray deletes his Instagram, brings it back, deletes it again. You know, he's all over the place. The NFC North, it seems like it's just the Packers again, albeit without Devontae Adams. So that's a huge change there. Just overall, just give me your thoughts, Casey, on if the Bucs are still in the top 2. Are they top 3? They're definitely top 5.
Oh my gosh, definitely top 5. But you make a good point. Like, I like the way that you set that up, because the reality of it is some of these teams are a hot mess.
Hot mess, yeah.
The Cardinals have pieces, but they have no flow. There's no correlation. There's no consistency. There's no ebb and flow there. And the Cardinals were a team that there's some games I actually enjoyed watching, but they've got things to figure out. 49ers, what the heck was that about with Debo? Like, why is he not happy? Why did he not want to be there? And that was something that caught everybody off guard, or a lot of people off guard in my knowledge. So for him to be sticking around, it's just like, under what end? And if you didn't really want to be there, then that kind of might affect your performance, or he may try to really overperform because he wants, to get out of that deal come after the season and stuff. So really looking at it, Seattle Seahawks, another puzzle piece that needs to be put together. Rams are probably still going to be the strongest team, but they're beatable. It's just having the right approach and having the health to back up that approach. But Von Miller was a huge contributor to a lot of their success, and a few other guys who, it's still up in the air who's fully retaining on that roster. The Cowboys, I have mixed emotions about it, because I feel like the top of last season, when we were talking about game 1, I was so confident to the fact that the Bucs were really going to handle it. Their best asset was Dak Prescott. He was coming off of those injuries and stuff, and then Dak ended up doing well, and so did the team, even though the Bucs still took the win. So that could be something that sneaks up depending on, again, execution and everything else and health. But I don't expect the Cowboys to really top the Bucs, especially when it comes to comparing rosters. Bucs still have the most talented roster without Rob Gronkowski. Green Bay, a hot mess. Like,
that song "Hot Mess"? I think it's like Cobra Starship, or it's like
yes.
one of those bands. You're a hot mess. Yeah. I have that stuck in my head now. Once you said that, might have to be the song.
It's all these teams. Like,
yeah.
Cobra's singing to all these guys. Like, it's the Aaron Rodgers drama show. Like, Green Bay needs a reality show. 49ers, there's a lot going on there we don't know about. Eagles are all right. I mean, they're in a developmental stage, so they could be surprising. I have learned, and I have been humbled, to not completely discount teams because their roster doesn't look very strong because of what Washington did. That was still the worst podcast ever in Pewter Report history, is me and John so definitively being like, there's no way the Bucs are going to go lose to Washington.
Shot.
Not a chance.
Get out of here. That's not
like happening. That was the easiest pregame podcast. We were just like, nah, no, hard no. And then that happens. So I have been humbled, and I can't say a hard no to any team in a developmental stage. But there's no one here that has a roster that really competes with Tampa Bay. For Tampa, it's really going to come down to game planning and execution. And yeah, there's some things that they're going to have to adjust and get out of their comfort zone on. If you don't have a stacked tight end roster, then, there's going to be a lot of plays that you're just going to really have to hold back on, or not really go with, or focus on crisping that up in training camp, if you will, so that you can execute them at the right time. If you're going to be a wide receiving heavy team, then your wide receivers have to step up. This question mark after wide receiver 3 is the only thing that terrifies me. And that's really the biggest thing that's going to knock them out of that number 1 seed to a potential 2 seed, maybe even a 3 seed, because you can't put this whole team on Mike Evans' back.
That's true. You can't. And Mike Evans is going to want to put the team on his back, because
he's a team first guy.
Exactly.
But
that's the type of guy that. Sorry, go ahead.
No. I'm legit same thing.
Got you.
Yeah.
I just think too, one of the coolest things is the Bucs are going to be able to control their own destiny, and I think we're going to get a little bit of a Brady revenge tour here, because they play the Rams, and a lot of these teams are going to be coming after the Bucs. Again, look at the beginning of the season. They start against Dallas, and they beat Dallas last year. So, Dallas is going to be going after them. Week 3, the Packers. The Bucs have had the Packers number 2 seasons ago when they went on to win the Super Bowl. The Chiefs, I bet they're still a little bit bitter about that Super Bowl. So But the cool thing is because they play the Rams and the Niners and the Cardinals, that's where I think the Brady revenge is obviously going to come in that Rams game. But I just think it's great they're going to be able to prove it to everyone and themselves that, all right, you want the number 1 seed? Great. You're going to get to play everyone that's going to be lobbying for that spot. And I think the teams we mentioned, Cowboys, Eagles, Rams, Niners, Cardinals, and you can throw the Packers in there too. Those are all the teams that are in the discussion to get that number 1 seed. And remember, there's only one bye. That was the change last year when they added a 17th game and they took away one of the byes. So the Bucs, who obviously know about the injury history, I think would absolutely love to get a bye. And I do agree. I think their roster stacks up with really anyone in this league, even with Rob Gronkowski not there.
Mm-hmm.
There is another team we have to talk about, Casey, and because we talked about all the other divisions, we didn't really talk about the NFC South too much. And understandably so. I think we know where the Falcons and the Panthers stand.
Mm-hmm.
But there is the New Orleans Saints. And we've talked about it before. The Bucs have not beaten the Saints in the regular season since Fitzmagic. Ryan Fitzpatrick was their quarterback. Fitzmagic is hot in the streets right now because a golfer, Matthew Fitzpatrick, won the U.S. Open, which is a big major in golf. And Ryan Fitzpatrick just got that, I think, Amazon deal. So good time for Fitzmagic. Anyway, the Saints, while the Bucs beat them in the playoffs, and that's the most important thing. So let's just make sure everyone knows that statement. It's more important that they won in the postseason. With that said, the Saints have really caused a lot of issues for the Bucs over the last 2 seasons. But going back to Gronk a little bit, just in terms of Gronk against the Saints, didn't really have too much of an impact in his time with Tampa. I mean, Gronk did so many great things for the Bucs, but in terms of playing the Saints, not the biggest of impacts. His first year, obviously that first game of the season, blocking tight end, had 2 receptions for 11 yards. And then later that year, where was it? I just had the stat up. I believe he only had 1 reception. Yeah, 1 reception for 2 yards. So that was in 2020. Mm-hmm. And then last year, more or less of the same when it came to playing the Saints. He started the game at New Orleans, but he was just coming off that rib injury. So he literally played 10% of the snaps and then didn't play the rest of the game. So he was still injured. Effectively, he didn't play in that game. And then, of course, he was a part of the 9-0 defeat at home where he had 2 receptions for 29 yards. So in terms of Gronk's overall production going up against the Saints, wasn't really a ton. Even the game where they defeated the Saints, he had 1 catch for 14 yards. So Gronk does so many great things for the Bucs, did so many great things. Wasn't necessarily the biggest factor when it came to playing against the Saints. So going against New Orleans this year, again, we know they're going to try to shut down Mike Evans and make Tom Brady throw the ball to the rest of the weapons that they have on offense. I really think this is going to be a situation where Leonard Fournette gets more involved because I don't think throwing to the running backs has been too much of a success for the Bucs going against New Orleans, and we saw them struggle trying to move the ball downfield. So it might just be something as simple as just dumping the ball off a little bit more to the running back. I don't think that's necessarily going to score them 30 points, but sometimes it's just survive and advance. And every time they play the Saints, when it's Bucs Saints, it's it's essentially a street fight. So you don't have to win pretty, you just have to win the game.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you just kind of have to take what you get and make the most of it. But you make a great point as to, like, of course, that's one of the most important matchups that we looked forward to every single season covering the Bucs. And the Saints just somehow have the Bucs number. Now, a couple things. Maybe Fitzpatrick being the last person to have success against the Saints and him retiring could be good luck again for the Bucs to finally get some W's in that column now that he's out of the league. That could hopefully be helpful. But I think that is going to be because it was Leonard Fournette that started to help give the Bucs, progressions against the Saints. It was his ability to kind of bear down and get those yards, and he runs hard. I know a lot of us are a little concerned about what playoff Lenny's or Lombardi Lenny's training camp weight and figure and stuff is going to be. But either way, he's a very strong guy, and I think that's going to be an asset and contribution to the Bucs regardless. Other than that, any time that the Bucs have done well against the Saints, depending on what quarter it was or specific plays, it was those other guys on the roster whose names aren't talked about as much. Those were the ones who were getting deeds done for the Bucs. And then, of course, Mike Evans not being completely shut down by their secondary. If there's one thing to be proud of this past season, I think we saw that Mike Evans is that dude. Like, he can really play against the top secondary and make it look easy, and he did very well with that. But still, it came down to the bottom tier of that wide receiving group to make any strides versus the Saints. So the good news, like you just mentioned, is that Gronk, while he is versatile, while he plays many roles for a team, he wasn't doing much against the Saints. He was
as far as a receiver, I think he's still very helpful. For the Bucs blocking, but as a receiver, I absolutely agree with your point. And again, like Tyler Johnson made a very clutch reception in the playoff game. It might have been his only catch. He may have had 2 catches.
I think he had 2.
If I'm not mistaken. But one of them was like a very, very important clutch reception there. Made the catch and, contributed in helping the Bucs win the game. You talk about Leonard Fournette there for a second concerning his weight. He did post a picture on Instagram today where he was golfing. He looked to be a little slimmed down. We'll see. There's still a couple more weeks. And it was one video and he was kind of, when you're putting, you're kind of like hunched over a little bit anyway. But I don't know, after he stood up, it looked like he seemed to be in better shape. And golf
when you want to be a powerhouse, you kind of have to stack in the offseason.
Exactly.
Instead, because that's how you put on muscle and gain strength. So I think there's a method to Fournette's madness. It hasn't stopped his production. So
another game that you could be productive as along with golf, of course, is bowling. And the best place to go bowling is at Pin Chasers. Folks, Pin Chasers has so many different locations. There's going to be one near you. They got East Pasco, Zephyr Hills, Midtown, and Veterans. They have one pretty close to the Advent Health Training Center where the Bucs have their practice and where training camp will be, as we announced. Well, we didn't announce. The Bucs announced it, and we brought it up on the show earlier. And going to Pin Chasers is more than just your typical bowling alley. It's a fun day or night out with friends and family. They have so many different deals all the time, whether it's all you can eat pizza, all you can bowl, $1 Miller Lights, brunch on the weekends. The food is very underrated. Pizza's great, chicken tendies, nachos, all the great stuff. And it's the summertime, all right? It's really freaking hot outside. So if you want to be in the AC, they got it blasting all the time. So it's a great thing to do in the summer. And also, if you want to host your child's birthday party, they have bowling, of course, but they also got the arcade area. So your kids can bowl, they can play some video games, parents can hang out and chill. So many different things to do with friends and family at Pin Chasers. Go to pinchasers.net to make sure you reserve a lane or book a partay. Casey, as we start wrapping up here, let's just go through some of the comments. Adam Davies, our guy, always in here. He said, sorry I'm late. I've been out. I'll have to catch up on podcast tomorrow. That's all right, because that's why we have our YouTube channel. We love it when you guys are live and talking with us and chatting it up. But we understand you guys are busy. You can't watch every single episode when it goes live. So you can catch it later on Pewter Report TV. So please hit the like button, subscribe, let you know when we have new videos dropping so you can catch it there. You can also listen to the audio version on everywhere where you find podcasts, such as Spotify, iTunes, all that good stuff. I personally like to use Spotify, but our podcast can be found everywhere. So hit that like and subscribe button. Tom Bucs fan said Scotty Miller had a catch for 29 yards. I think he's referring to probably the playoff game against the Saints. Mm-hmm. Again, that just goes back to everyone Antonio Brown used to say this, so probably not the best example, but he always said everyone putting their hands in the pile. They got contributions from everyone all over the place that year in the playoffs. Obviously, Scotty's claim to fame was the touchdown against the Packers. I'm so excited for Scotty this year. I really hope he could be healthy because I thought he was great during OTAs, but just, he had something going on where he didn't practice during minicamp. I hope that he could stay healthy because it seemed like he was really turning that corner there. We'll see.
I feel like if him and Tom can just kind of have a come together, I almost said kumbaya, and I wanted to jump off my balcony for saying that because it makes me think of Antonio Brown. Sorry, guys. But I think Tom Brady and Scotty Miller need to just have a come to Jesus meeting because Scotty can be very useful. I am a Scotty Miller fan. He has shown up in very crucial moments. I just think that there needs to be a little bit more, faith, a little bit more trust there. So I'm hoping for a season for Scotty Miller. He's still here, so he's got purpose.
Tom says Scotty has it.
Yes.
Some people do have the it factor. I don't necessarily know if Scotty's there, but the Bucs did start using Scotty in different ways, whether it's misdirections, end arounds, and things like that. I think I think that would really be a greater way to utilize him. I just like this comment from Big Tips here. In the 50s, Scotty would have been a Hall of Famer, probably because he would have been way faster than everyone. But I don't know if there would have been a quarterback that had the arm strength to throw it deep.
That's a great point, actually. Scotty would have been thriving.
Yeah, big MGM. Cool. I got the same initials, man. MGM. Crazy as it sounds, but pass catching isn't the biggest non-Gronk question. It's the O-line, especially Donovan Smith, ready for a non-Gronk offense. I respectfully, big MGM, and I'm a fan of you because we shared the initials. I'm respectfully going to disagree. Obviously, not having Gronk as a blocking tight end will hurt. And yeah, he's good lining up on the end, helping out the tackles. But I think Donovan Smith has really progressed his game, especially since Tom Brady got there. And sure, some of it might be just because, Brady gets the ball out quickly. But I think Donovan Smith is up there. I'm not going to say he's the best tackle in the league, but I think he's definitely he's moved up the ranks to at least like top 10, I would say. And I think each year he works on his game more and more. He's an Iron Man. He doesn't miss games, which I think there's huge credit to that. Ryan Jensen is considered the best center in the league. And Tristan Wirfs, what else do we need to say? He's only been here for 2 seasons and is already like on the path to being a Hall of Famer. He already earned an All-Pro. If you want to have questions about the interior offensive line, sure, I understand your concerns. But again, trading for Shaq Mason, many are saying it's an upgrade over Alex Kappa. And while he's a smaller guy, he had a lot of success in New England with the Patriots. So I think that will translate to playing here with the Bucs. And on the other side of the ball, that's the competition that we're talking about on offense outside of, the receivers 4 through 6. I think it's going to be an awesome competition between Gedeke and Aaron Stinney, Nick Leverett, Robert Hainsey, whoever else they want to throw in there. But I think whoever's going to win it is going to earn it. All right, it's not going to be like, oh, geez, damn, week 1 of the season, we'll go with you. Someone's going to earn it. And I think their offensive line will be nasty again and be up there towards the top of the league. What say you, Casey?
I 100% agree with this, especially with, the Shaq Mason thing. Like, again, Tom Brady played a crucial role in kind of recruiting this season, and he's a very meticulous guy. So we have to trust the fact that there's a lot of purpose behind this. And nothing against Kappa, but, realistically, how many fans and how many analysts and how many people that cover the Bucs were like, hey, Kappa was performing well because of who was to the right and the left of him. Yeah. Mason's not the guy who needs to be good because of the person playing to the right or the left of him. Mason's good because he's gritty, he's strong, and he's good. So I think already naturally being so talented and even a little more talented than Kappa and not relying on the guys next to you, but having strong figures next to you, this O-line is going to be just fine. And it's not going to come down to a blocking tight end helping. And even when that is the case, depending on the play that's being ran, Keith, however you say his name, like for some reason, I am trusting the fact that this kid is going to be outrageous right out the gate. He just doesn't seem all there. And those are the people that just do insane things on the field. And I mean that in a great way. I'm excited to see him play. So you've got some great youth on this team that I feel like can contribute right out the gate. Gadecki, I'm very excited to see what he does and how he manages. I mean, Stinney has started to really earn a slot around there, but I think Gadecki's going to give him a run for it. So I think the O-line is going to be fine. I don't think it's going to come down to, relying on the tight end to really contribute there. And that's not exactly why they wanted Gronk there. Gronk just happened to be helpful in that sense. But when it came down to it and Tom Brady was relying on his friend, Tom Brady was relying on the guy who was going to open up the middle of the field or that last-minute pass that he can go to and know that it was going to be caught. It wasn't always about the blocking. And now you have guys who are blocking dominant people that can kind of focus on that. So I think it's going to be fine.
Very well put, Casey, and we will end the show on that note. Thank you, everyone, for watching, listening, or participating in the chats. Had a lot of great questions and comments today, so we really appreciate you guys. We will be back on Monday for a whole new slate of shows. So for Casey Hudson, for Matt Matera, I'm saying thanks, everyone, for watching, and we'll catch you next week for a brand new edition of the Pewter Report Podcast. Out! Go Bolts. Steers isn't over yet.
Nah.